Hello and welcome to this little tutorial series on Ultraschall 5. My name is Joram. So you've installed Ultraschall on your machine and now you're eager to start. Today I want to show you how you can create your very first project so you're ready to record. Again, I will give a very brief explanation on how to get going with your project setup, and then I will talk about the details a little bit later on in the video. So stick with me if you want to learn a little bit more about the functionality of Ultraschall. So what I did here is I just created a blank new project. I didn't save it or anything yet. This is always the first thing that I recommend to do. I'm just going to call this a sample project. And as I said already in another video, the most important checkbox in this dialog is create subdirectory for project, because then it will consolidate all of your files in one folder. That will be your project file, backup files, and the raw recording will all end up here, which is especially interesting because sometimes, I don't know, if your computer crashes or something like this happens and your project file is gone, you want to know where your raw audio files are, because these .flug files will never be destroyed when the project crashes. You can always recover from them. We're going to save that. And now let's add some tracks. For this sample project, I want to show you how you can podcast with two people, so 2 tracks and a soundboard track. And for good measure, we'll also throw in a remote track. The easiest way to introduce the basic tracks is by just double-clicking in the left area here. I did that twice, and then I have my 2 tracks. I'm going to call this Joram, and I'm going to call this Joram 2. And now we're going to arm these. And by doing so, we're triggering the soundcheck wizard, and the soundcheck realizes, oh, you have 2 tracks now that are getting the same input. Is that really what you want to do? And in this case, I don't want to do that. I click auto assign inputs, and then it tells me that it assigns the individual tracks to the individual inputs of my interface. My interface has 1 microphone input and 1 instrument input. I don't have anything in my instrument input, so my track 2 will stay quiet for this demo, but on track 1 I have my voice. If you have, for example, a 4-track interface, you just create 4 tracks here and auto-assign the inputs, and then you will have all of the interface inputs ending up in a track in your system here, and then you can record. The next thing I want to do is insert a remote track, and to do that I click on podcast, insert studio link and soundboard tracks, and insert studio link track. This will open a browser window, and in this browser window I have the control for my call. I have my studio link ID. I can call people from here or get calls from this place. And this is just open in the browser. You need that for the connection of your call, but right now we can just go back to Ultraschall. And now finally we want to also introduce a soundboard track. For that, we're just going to hit the tab key. It tells me, oh, you don't have a soundboard track right now. Do you want to create one? I'm saying yes, please do that. And then I have soundboard track. I'm arming this, and then I will also go down here in my effects panel. There I have my soundboard. I'm clicking on the folder and I'm selecting a folder. I already have one here. And in the folder, I simply have MP3 files. I named them in the Finder in alphabetical order, and this is the order they will show up in my soundboard. And now I can just hit a button, and it plays my file. And with that, I can simply build my own soundboard here. I have a couple of controls here, like looping and fade in and fade out, that I can use in the soundboard. And that's it. And with that, I'm already good to go. I usually save once more before I start the recording. I hit the record button, and now I can do my show. I have my other inputs here. I could have my guest on the Studio Link track, and that's it. So before we end the brief introduction, what you want to do, what you want to make sure is that you have the magical routing or magic routing turned on, and that you have 1 track for every person that you want to talk to. On Studio Link, you can connect at least to up to 6 people, maybe even more. Last time I checked, I think it was 6 people. And if you want to talk to 6 people, you need 6 Studio Link tracks. And you could either simply copy paste more Studio Link tracks in here, or you go through the menu and add another Studio Link track until you have enough tracks for all the people that you want to connect to. So the basic idea is you assign one track per person that you're talking to. You're never going to mix two people on the same track, because this doesn't work for Studio Link and also is a bad idea for your editing. You insert your soundboard file or soundboard track, and that's it. You're good to go. You do your recording, you prepare all tracks for editing when you're done, and you're good to go. So that's the very short introduction on how to create your setup. Now I want to briefly talk to you about the details. What do you want to do if your setup is a little bit more complicated? Where do you want to look? For example, what do you do if you have an interface that has, I don't know, more than 4 inputs, and the inputs are not in a very simple order that the software can automatically recognize it? Maybe you have a fancy musician's interface with 16 different inputs and microphone is on 7 and 9. How do you get that sorted out? To do that, you have to work with the routing matrix. You find that down here. There's one of the tabs. That's the routing matrix. Probably if you have an expensive, fancy interface, you might already understand how routing matrices work, but I will still show you how the basic functionality is here. So you have rows and you have columns. The rows are your sources and the columns are your destinations. You see, we have my inputs here from my audio interface at the bottom, and we have the outputs of my audio interface in the columns on the right, and then I have a row and a column for all of my tracks that I have in my setup here. And now you simply follow the source, and then you see where it will end up. My input will end up on track 1. My input 2 will end up on track 2. My track 1 Yoram will be played to the Studio Link tracks because they want to hear me, and then it won't be played to the output of my interface, because that would then mean that I hear myself talking through the software. But my interface has local monitoring, so I don't have to hear myself through the software. I don't have to loop it back through the computer and then play it back to me, because that will introduce a delay and it will be annoying. So I don't hear myself here. Same for track 2. Track 2 is also from my interface, so also direct monitoring, also no loop back from my computer. The Studio Link tracks, however, I want to hear them, so they will be sent here. And finally, the soundboard track, it's sent to the Studio Link tracks because they want to hear the jingles that I'm playing, and it's sent to my output because I want to hear the output of my soundboard as well. So this is the basic setup here, and you might realize already now, if you want to change anything for your inputs, if you have a lot of inputs here on your interface, you simply move these red dots around, and then you can assign the inputs as you please. If you have, for example, an instrument connected that you want to play, and maybe it's a stereo input for your instrument, you can assign these here through your interface to different tracks. Or if you have more microphones, more people, other more esoteric stuff that you want to plug in here, this is how you assign it to tracks. And if you want to hear tracks or not hear certain tracks, this is where you adjust that. So if I say I don't want to hear my soundboard, I'm holding down the Alt key and I'm clicking, and then I remove this icon here. And then I don't hear the soundboard anymore, and only my guests hear it. Or if I have a guest who should not hear a soundboard right now, I can remove it here as well, and then my guests won't be hearing the soundboard, and it will just record it, but nobody will hear it during the live recording. Let me just turn this all back on by clicking on the preset here, and because I have the magic routing still on, it will just revert to the default. This is also something you have to keep in mind whenever you change something here, especially in the assignment of the routing here. If you change anything here, you have to turn off the magic routing, because it will try to go back to the default that works in most cases. And if you do something here, it will just undo that action periodically, and then you will have trouble. So now I want to show you why I usually have the magic routing turned off after I've set up my my tracks. It is because I like to change the volume of the soundboard for the people listening, because often my MP3 files are the right volume for the recording, but they're not the right volume for the live recording because they are just too loud. And to change that, I simply click in one of these icons, and then I can drag this slider here, make it louder or make it more quiet. And with that, I can then adjust the individual volume for this output. That doesn't change the volume that it's recorded at. So the file will just be sort of untouched, but when it's played as an output, it's more quiet here. Or if I have remote guests and they tell me, look, the jingles are too loud that you're playing right now, I can turn them down here for them specifically. Also, I have them then here for the individual people. So if guest number 3 says your jingles are too loud, I can turn them down for them. But the other ones, if they're fine with it, they just get the regular volume of it. And so with that, I can fine tune my settings here. I can assign inputs as I please. I can fine tune the volume. So if you have anything that's more complicated, look into this routing matrix. But in most cases, literally in 99% of the cases, you'll be fine. If you turn on magic routing, have it all be in the default setting, it will make sure that everybody who's supposed to hear you hears you, and will make sure that all of the inputs are assigned correctly and that your recording will just be a success. With that, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.